So, all right, let's talk about this Zohran Mamdani 9/11 stuff that I also have been, tangentially involved in once again. If a boring normie like me download this app to see what you're all about, it's the beginning of the end for people trying to lie about how evil you are. This is wild. Well, glad to have you here, buddy. Glad to have you here, my friend. Hopefully, you won't go back to those places that have just been fucking lying about what I believe and what I represent and why I'm so evil. But let's talk about the true evil, the New York Post. So New York Post wrote this insane article, expected. Wall Street Journal wrote about it as well, because it's the 25th anniversary of 9/11. Zohran Mamdani is the mayor, as you guys know. And obviously, he's going to attend the 25th anniversary of 9/11, as every mayor has attended the anniversary of 9/11. So once again, we're faced with the predicament of how racist can people get before, the rest of polite society turn around and say, okay, enough is fucking enough. You need to dial it back. This time, especially, this comes after Zohran Mamdani did the whole video calling Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal, which and demanded his arrest from the federal government. Israel has put the crosshairs on Zohran once again in pretty aggressive ways. I'm going to say it out loud. This kind of stuff is a coalition of, these kinds of news articles is a coalition of, homegrown Islamophobia and Zionist Hasbara pressure. It's not a secret that Israel is fomenting Islamophobia because they recognize that they are indefensible. They recognize that their propaganda apparatus can no longer focus on making Israel look good. They know this already. They've lost the Western world. They've lost an entire generation, and they've certainly lost the Western world. But the one thing that the Israeli Foreign Ministry, which oversees the Hasbara operations, has recognized is that Americans are still very Islamophobic. So instead of trying to defend Israel, Israel defenders will now try to make people as Islamophobic as possible. Okay? There's drop site reporting on this. They uncovered the Israeli Foreign Ministry's own PowerPoints on this issue. They went back, they polled the people, they realized that nobody really fucks with Israel anymore, but at least people hate Muslims, and Israel can keep tweaking the dial of Islamophobia as aggressively as possible, right? And this is very clearly one of those attempts. Zohran Mamdani is a prominent Muslim politician. He's the mayor of New York. They're going to try to increase the Islamophobia that he's receiving to the best of his ability. To the best of their ability, especially at a time when a new YouGov poll shows that 49% of Americans think Netanyahu should be arrested. Every single audience group that isn't conservative has either a majority or clear plurality, including white people. A plurality of white people, which are the least woke demographic in this country, are in favor of arresting Benjamin Netanyahu. It's clear, unless you're on the American right, you support arresting Netanyahu. So this is part of the reason why they are aggressively pushing the Zohran Mamdani shit. Okay? In an effort to spread more racism and Islamophobia against Mamdani, the New York Times implies that the stabbing of an Asian man and a Jewish man was somehow connected to Mamdani's call for Netanyahu's arrest. They use a disturbing attack to shield a man committing mass atrocities from criticism. So obviously mainstream media, it's not just the New York Post that's doing this. New York Times is doing a variant of this as well. Wall Street Journal is doing a variant of this as well. So it's not just like the dish rags such as New York Post that's attacking Zohran Mamdani and claiming that he is a vicious anti-Semite, a Hamasnik, a person that is responsible for Jew hatred growing in the country, and also a Muslim terrorist. So Judd Legume, he saw this article in the New York Post, which I didn't even cover because it's fucking ridiculous. But it was this article came out in the New York Post that claimed thousands of 9/11 families demand Mamdani be banned from the 25th anniversary ceremony. Stay away. Families of 9/11 victims are demanding Mayor Mamdani, pictured embracing Imam Siraj Wahhabi, an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, be barred from the 25th anniversary ceremony at Ground Zero and have collected more than 3,600 petition signatures in less than a week. Our objection is based on his public record, his failure to meaningfully acknowledge the horror of that day, and his employment of support for or association with individuals who have minimized 9/11, defended terrorists, or even suggested America deserved the attack, said Giovanni Galante, whose 29-year-old wife, Grace, was among the 2,977 innocents killed. Okay? Well, here's the thing. Judd Legum went in and actually did real journalism. Turns out there are still some real journalists out there. He investigated. This New York Post cover, 1,000 9/11 families demand Mamdani be banned from 25th anniversary, is a brazen lie. How do I know? I interviewed the organizer of the petition. He admitted that there is no list of 9/11 families seeking to ban Mamdani from the anniversary ceremony. Even the smaller estimate that appears in the text of the article, 300 9/11 families, is just an estimate based on the organizer's assumptions about how the petition spread. I don't go through the list and look at the names, he said. Nevertheless, the claims in the New York Post article have spread widely on conservative websites, from Fox News and from Fox News all the way down to ZBS, another conservative website. Okay? So he interviewed the petition organizer, including his belief that Mamdani wants to get rid of all Jewish people and believes 9/11 should have happened to us and Zohran Mamdani's belief that 9/11 should have happened, right? That's what the petition organizer is claiming. So he's an unbelievably racist guy. Okay? Fox News bringing you up in their Zohran bits every chance they get, mentions you at 0.44. Oh, yeah. They're saying that Zohran is also inciting hatred towards homeowners, and he's trying to get homeowners killed. But this is a separate story. I mean, they're going into full tilt panic at this point. Okay? Zohran Mamdani, who was Muslim, stood in the manner of a vizier awaiting his tribute, his beard oriented towards Mecca, his silence thick as a tar, his cheekbones set in the geometry of jihad. A muezzin was heard in his heart. He was not smiling. The gates of Vienna shuddered. Yeah, when he doesn't smile, the evil shows, says Josh Wolf. When Zohran Mamdani smiles, he smiles Islamic style. When he doesn't smile, he also is doing it in an Islamic manner. Of course, smiling. When Zohran Mamdani smiles, he's smiling for jihad. When he's not smiling, he's also angry to do even, you guessed it, more jihad. It's always evil. He's always doing Islamic style jihad. Turns out it's just fucking racism. Okay? Turns out that's all this is. But yeah, Eyal Yacobi got his licks in as well. Israel's most annoying propagandist in a legion of annoying propagandists for Israel. 9/11 families aren't against Zohran because he's Muslim. They're against him because he campaigned with someone who said that their family members deserve to be killed on 9/11. I never said that. Okay? I don't believe that. Doesn't matter. People just lie about that quote all day, every day. But I responded to it. Because I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, enough is enough. These guys are fucking being unbelievably racist towards Zohran. Okay? To which I responded with, and it actually was received fairly positively on Twitter, which was shocking. I said, 7 years ago, I said, we brought 9/11 upon ourselves. 7 years ago, I apologized for my language. Since then, I've helped get a 9/11 first responder elected into office. His name is Adam Hamawi, which you guys also called a terrorist because he's Muslim. I don't think Zionists care about 9/11 beyond fomenting Islamophobia. And that's the truth. That's all this is. Okay? That's all this is. The idea that an American, such as myself, could say, we brought 9/11 upon ourselves, or we deserve 9/11 to any degree, is, of course, destroyed when the American that's saying that is obviously not a real American, okay? I'm too Muslim to have said such a thing, okay? And, of course, it doesn't even fucking matter if I say, hey, look, I shouldn't have used the language of deserved, okay? Because it's very clearly being weaponized by the right. This was in 2019, and it's still being weaponized again, okay? But ultimately, it's because I'm not an American in the eyes of all these people, okay? I'm not an American. I'm not a real American. Having said that, however, 1 million people, from comedians to commentators, have also had similar takes on 9/11, if not far worse takes on 9/11. Tony Hinchcliffe has made a shit ton. Tony Hinchcliffe has made a shit ton of jokes, and nobody on the Republican side gave a shit. Nobody cares about Bill Maher's takes about 9/11, who Bill Maher said something far worse than anything I said. Right after 9/11, he lost his job for it, but nobody ever gives a shit about his takes on 9/11 now. So it turns out there's a couple different components in the 9/11 story. One, are you white? Are you white enough? If you're Muslim and you have any opinions on 9/11, that means you love 9/11. You want more 9/11s to happen. Okay? And perhaps even more importantly than that, are you pro-Israel? Are you pro-American imperialism? If you're pro-American imperialism, and better yet, more importantly than pro-American imperialism, are you pro-Israel? Because if you're pro-Israel and pro-American imperialism, then it doesn't matter what you've said about 9/11. You're good. You're a good guy. That's it. Donald Trump has said more fucked up things about 9/11 than I ever could. Donald Trump, on the morning of 9/11, called in to a radio show to say, well, at least my Trump Tower is now the highest building standing on Wall Street. That's real. Look it up. But Donald Trump, once again, white, Republican, American president, super pro-Israel. It doesn't even fucking matter. Do you understand? So there are a lot of people who want to be very precious about who gets to talk about 9/11 and how they get to talk about 9/11. It's completely cynical. It's completely cynical, and we have to stop playing this fucking game. That's it. This was a tragedy, and you are cynically trying to use this tragedy to foment Islamophobia, because that's the reality. You don't give a shit. You don't give a shit about the victims. You don't give a shit about the impact. You just want to use this horrible tragedy where almost 3,000 Americans died to continue lying about Muslims, to continue shitting on Muslims, oftentimes at the behest of Israel. So, sucks to suck. Okay? Yeah, I mean, here's another example. Breitbart News. Adam HasanAbi makes excuse for Hasan's America Deserved 9/11 comments. If I had to ramble for 8 hours, I don't know what would come out of my mouth. I think we all have to put it all in perspective. Well, he's a 9/11 first responder. But once again, it doesn't even matter, right? Because he's Muslim. He's Muslim and therefore responsible for 9/11. That is precisely how they presented this. Adam HasanAbi is the greatest example of no matter how hard you serve this country, even if you literally were there at ground zero saving fucking lives, as Adam HasanAbi was, as long as you're Muslim, you did 9/11. Okay? That's it. That's it. Because at the end of the day, the people that constantly advance this, the people that are not normal at all, by the way, because this is not a normally shared sentiment, but the people that constantly advance this agenda to be like, oh, this guy loved 9/11. He loves 9/11 over and over and over again. Despite the fact that, again, I apologize for the language I used in 2019. The people that are cynically still making this a salient issue or trying to make this a salient issue are doing so in a way that most people understand is cynical. Okay? People understand. Average, normal Americans understand that this shit is cynical as fuck. Okay? It's cynical as fuck. It's racist as fuck. You don't have to put up with it. It's 2026. Suck my fucking dick. Okay? It's 2026. Donald Trump is entertaining giving nuclear arms to the country that is perhaps most responsible for 9/11, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Nobody gives a shit. Okay? We give more of a shit than clearly the Republicans do. So shut the fuck up. Anyway, yeah, and it's there's also obviously a generational difference here as well, but yeah, the majority of the families of 9/11 victims voted for Zohran Mamdani. Families of 9/11 victims want to ban Mamdani from the sacred 25th anniversary at Ground Zero. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. Shut the fuck up. Being a 9/11 victim family member doesn't give you permission to be a racist asshole, okay? And as a matter of fact, I suspect that plenty of other 9/11 victim family members are probably going to start yelling about these dumb dickheads who are trying to turn the 25th anniversary of 9/11, this tragedy, to an insane racism seminar for some fucking weird reason. How selfish. How ridiculous. Who the fuck do you think you are, man? Anyway, where were we? What else were we going to talk about? Yeah, Matt Iglesias. Yeah, speaking of which, by the way, Prem Talker is right. He says, nothing shows how much of a bubble Twitter has become than this. The media politics world on here went absolutely nuts on Zohran Mamdani after he called for Netanyahu's arrest. If you were only on here, you'd think he was in trouble. Turns out most of America agrees with him. Yeah. But this is also part of the reason why they're going crazy. Like, they're going crazy mode on Zohran. Israeli infiltration and interception of American consciousness continues. Obviously, it's not as successful. Having said that, however, that's not stopping them from trying. They're spending billions at this point. I believe a Quincy Institute guy went on Steve Bannon to talk about it. I bookmarked it. Let me find that video first. Here it is. Yeah. Quincy Institute's Nick Cleveland Stout went on Steve Bannon to talk about his latest article. His latest article that covers Netanyahu says Israel is fighting an eighth front for the hearts and minds of Americans. The price tag since October 2023 has been over $1 billion. $46.5 million to Trump's former campaign manager to build websites shaping how AI chatbots talk about Israel. This is, of course, reference to Brad Parscale's operation, working with Salem Media as well, the right-wing Christian nationalist network that Scott Jennings is a part of. $45 million to Google, YouTube, and Meta to deny the hunger crisis in Gaza. $3.2 million to affirm that geofenced American churches during worship. The problem, for the first time ever, more Americans now sympathize with Palestinians than Israelis. So it's not working. Israel spent over $1 billion on public diplomacy efforts since 2023, including more than $100 million on efforts to influence the U.S. Disclosed under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, this country is now on track to be the biggest FARA spender this year. Now, what's interesting about this is the stuff that we know that's targeted by FARA, because a lot of what Israel gets to do on American soil, that it utilizes the evangelical Christian network and also many of the Zionist organizations that masquerade as like Jewish advocacy organizations, are homegrown. They're American, right? They're comprised of American citizens, sometimes dual citizens, but it doesn't matter. That's not a part of the FARA restriction. So the actual impact is far larger, even though the FARA expenditure here is on track to become the largest. Okay, this is just the tip of the iceberg, however. And then there's also obviously a lot of the covert operations. You know, Lindsey Graham trips to Israel, coming back and talking to fucking Donald Trump. Shit that you hear on Wall Street Journal, CNN, and all these other outlets. They're not dinged as, foreign agents operating at the behest of a foreign state. That's just a regular Sunday, okay? Jacob Wendler on Political Reports with help from Daniel Lippman. First in PI. FARA Friday, Israel shifting away from its traditional strategy of relying on American-led groups like AIPAC to advance its interests in the U.S. and is instead increasing hiring foreign agents to ramp up its influence efforts, per a new paper from foreign policy think tank Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Israel has spent over $1 billion on public diplomacy efforts since 2023, including more than $100 million on efforts to influence the U.S., disclosed under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Per the new report from Nick Cleveland Stout, a research associate in Quincy Institute's Democratizing Foreign Policy program. The country is now on track to be the biggest FARA spender this year. 17 new firms registered under FARA to work for Israeli interests in 2024 and 2025, including former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale's firm Clock Tower X, which holds the largest contract at $46.5 million. Per the report, Clock Tower X has disclosed attempts to seed pro-Israel framing. Nearly $1 billion to try and melt the minds of American boomers, American evangelical Christians, and still failing to do so. Here's the video between Steve Bannon and Nick Cleveland talking about this. I can't believe I'm showing you Steve Bannon, but...
Cleveland Stout from Quincy. You've got a report that I want to make sure we go through it in detail so people can see and read for themselves and look at your backup data so they come to their own conclusion. But it's pretty jaw-dropping. You basically assert from your research that since October 7th, the Hamas attack, terrorist attack, surprise attack on Israel, that since roughly that time, is it $1 billion or close to $1 billion has been spent by Israel for influencers and radio? And I'm not saying Sid or Mark Levin took that money. I just want to use that as an example of some of the over-the-top pitches you're hearing on Fox News right now. But that $1 billion has gone in an influence operation, very sophisticated, very systematic, not just onesies, twosies, but to basically change opinion or to influence opinion and then political action in the United States, sir?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me. But that's exactly right. That about $1 billion has been allocated for public diplomacy, hasbara efforts abroad, not just in the U.S. But you can. I tracked about 100 million of those dollars has been spent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is, as your viewers are probably well aware, this law that requires contractors, lobbyists of foreign governments to disclose what they're doing on behalf of foreign governments. So, yeah, it's a lot of money, and it's being used for a lot of things. Influencing chatbots, paying influencers, reaching out to evangelical Christians, all kinds of things that we can get into.
Now, this is separate. I just want to make sure this is separate from APAC and money they put in either for lobbying or.
Yeah, APAC doesn't get hit with fare restrictions, for the record. Just so you understand. A single American evangelical organization, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, sends like $100 million to Israel per year. These investments in propagandizing to America pays dividends just in pure cash. Exactly. So Israel registering as a foreign agent to specifically geofence Christian evangelical churches, okay, to specifically target Salem, which is what Brad Parscale is doing, which is the Christian Evangelical Network, okay? That pays dividends back to Israel because all of these Christian evangelicals then collect donations and fundraise for a lot of the West Bank operations, a lot of the West Bank settlement operations, okay? All tax-free, by the way. It's outright illegal, and yet it's still tax-free, all these tax-free donations. It's fantastic. Yeah, if you're wondering why it's so difficult, to get this message across to some Americans, or if you're wondering why it's so tough, it's so hard to get politicians to be more understanding, it's because there's a lot of financial interests at play here. There's a lot of moneyed interests at play. Israel is now on track to become the largest spender on foreign influence under FARA in 2026, more than even Gulf neighbors like the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Okay, this was a breakdown of the report, which we'll go through right now. Israel has spent more than $100 million since 2023 on foreign lobbying in the U.S. to influence chatbots, to sponsor delegations of influencers, to carry out mass texting campaigns. Some of the mass texting campaigns are AI. You have probably received, I have received questions about what my feelings are on Israel as an ally to the United States of America. U.S. survey groups, right? I'm sure plenty of you, because it's so all-encompassing, it's so broad that they do push polls to basically manipulate people's attitudes about Israel by framing it as though it's a polling operation. That's this program. They're funding Christian theology programs. They're also creating a network of websites specifically designed to manipulate AI so that the LLMs, the large language models that people readily use, that people rely on, that people actually trust a lot, will spit out pro-Israeli propaganda. It is unbelievably nefarious. It is insidious. And in many respects, it's being done in broad daylight. The ADL, led by Jonathan Greenblatt, has been quite open about these attempts. Jonathan Greenblatt goes to synagogues all around the country and goes on these different panels all around the country and openly admits to it. They talk about how they are designing websites specifically to manipulate chatbots, to manipulate ChatGPT and other large language models. It's insane. French PR firm Havas Media is central to Israel's new strategy, directing tens of millions of dollars to Americans eager to be the foot soldiers of Israel's new information war for the right price. Here are all of the American firms that Havas Media has directed resources and funds to. Okay? Clock Tower X, Show Faith Works LLC, outreach to evangelicals. Bridges Partners LLC, $900,000, overseeing a social media influencer cohort. Piro Inc., Targeted Communications Global, parent company Stagwell, for media outreach, mostly the conservative media like Fox News and New York Post. Davis Media New York City LLC, parent company Stagwell, for a social media campaign. SKDK Knickerbocker LLC, parent company Stagwell, media outreach, no longer active. Clock Tower received the largest sum. This is Brad Parscale's operation, former Trump social media manager, Brad Parscale's operation, and the $28.5 million that they received comes, the $28.5 million that they received for integrating pro-Israel messaging into Salem Media. As I told you, Salem Media is the premier Christian evangelical broadcaster. Scott Jennings is a part of Salem Media. Many others are a part of Salem Media. They've also utilized, Brad Parscale's also utilized these websites that I was talking about, influencing artificial intelligence services such as Claude and carrying out a texting campaign. And the projected contract total number is $46.5 million. This is part of an overall strategy from Netanyahu to win the eighth front, the battle for hearts and minds, as Benjamin Netanyahu calls it. Israel has invested over $1 billion in overall public diplomacy or Hasbara efforts since 2023, with $750 million of that being allocated for 2026. So if you're wondering why there's so much more Islamophobia, if you're wondering why there are so many attacks against prominent critics of Israel, whether it be Zohran Mamdani or even someone like myself, no matter how big or small they might be, this is where it's coming from. They are spending unbelievable amounts of money to do this. They're spending unbelievable amounts of money to try to desperately cling on to the remaining demographics, the far right, or not the far right necessarily, but like the evangelical Christian base for Trump. And they're doing everything they can to make prominent critics of Israel's lives a living hell. But even as Israel invests more, American public opinion towards Israel continues to plummet. A Gallup poll this year found that for the first time ever, more Americans sympathize with Palestinians at 41% than Israelis at 36%. Think about that. That's never happened because that's how toxic Israel is. That's how much of a social pariah Israel has become. That Americans recognize Israel and its toxic influence over American domestic policy and certainly over American foreign policy. It's over, in spite of their best attempts. But this means our job is not done. This means we can't let up. This means that we have to keep pushing. We have to continue telling the truth, no matter what the cost is, okay? A few years ago, Israel barely invested in formal influence operations under FARA, especially since pro-Israel orgs like AIPAC were so effective. For the longest time, Israel got to do, Zionist indoctrination through pro-Israel groups, Israel First groups that masqueraded as Jewish advocacy groups on U.S. soil with loyal soldiers of Israel, whether they be Zionist Jews in prominent positions of power or the far larger number of evangelical Zionists, Christian evangelical Zionists, okay? It's a multifaceted approach as well. It doesn't just stay with the Republican side. Okay. Unlike many other issues, this issue was not as politically polarizing as it has become in the United States of America. It was not as partisan as it's become in the United States of America. For the longest time in the United States of America, there were plenty of Zionist advocacy operations, Hasbara operatives, that were deeply embedded and worked within the confines of the liberal progressive movement as well. This has always been the case in the Western world. That's why there's a term for it in our corner of the world. We call it PEP, Progressive Except for Palestine. This is part of the reason why you've probably seen so many people that you thought were wonderful, progressive, social justice warriors show that they have a very hypocritical stance when it comes to the human rights disaster that we have contributed to with American tax dollars, with American munitions, and American social and political cover on the international stage. If you're wondering how this happened, well, Zionist indoctrination for decades and decades that went unimpeded. And yet they're still losing. Shannon Watts is a great example of a Hasbara operative. Okay, Shannon Watts, Moms Demand Action. Fred Gutenberg, a victim of the mass shooting incident, the school shooting incident. These are people who have been prominent activists on the progressive space for a very long time. And yet, while they have spent a good deal of time criticizing the NRA for its toxic influence on American politics, its destructive influence on American democracy, they do not have the same attitude about the largely MAGA billionaire funded AIPAC. Because AIPAC funds all of these other groups as well. Okay? If you're wondering how someone like Shannon Watts can be so adamant about ending school shootings here for American children, but then find themselves defending school explosions over there for the children of Gaza, for the children of Lebanon, for the children of Iran, well, that's because AIPAC has been a prominent funder, or AIPAC-style subsidiary organizations and liberal Zionists have played a major role in funding these other advocacy networks. So it's always been a multifaceted approach. For the evangelical Christians, you talk about the theological justifications for why Israel must be as violent as it is, why there must be a demographic replacement of all the non-Jews in the land known as Israel, the Greater Israel Project. There's a theological justification for the evangelical Zionists. For the liberals, there's pink washing. For the liberals, you say Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel is the gayest country in the Middle East, when Lebanon is right there, ironically enough. Lebanon, which is known for,
I'm gay and Lebanese.
For the NATO Atlanticists, Israel plays a formative role in creating an American defense umbrella in the region against these scary enemies. For the people who are worried about ISIS, Israel plays a role in combating ISIS, when it ironically has not. They lie about this too. So there is a different way to propagandize to different audiences, and Israel has obviously operated a very sophisticated Hasbara operation for each individual demographic and each individual psychographic profile on U.S. soil. And they've done this for decades. And yet, in spite of that sophisticated propaganda apparatus, Americans have woken up to what Israel has been getting up to for the past 3 years. They've seen what Israel does. And now they hate it. They hate it because many of the envoys, many of the advocates of Israel are also unbelievably entitled. They're so arrogant. They constantly demand more. They take for granted the billions of dollars, $380 billion since the inception of the Israeli state for the past 80 years of money that they've received. They take for granted the MOU that Barack Obama signed off on, $3.8 billion of direct cash to the Israeli state so they can come back and purchase Tamir interceptors. Contract that's supposed to end soon. That was Obama's goodbye message to Israel. On the way out, he signed off on the Memorandum of Understanding for Israel. A decade of $3.8 billion a year. Okay? And this is before we even talk about the loyalists to Israel, the Israel firsters that operate in a lot of these mainstream circles. Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, Ross Douthat, virtually all of the highest profile news anchors have a very specific and very clear bias towards Israel. And even in spite of all of that, Americans are still demanding an arms embargo. Americans are still demanding that we no longer give money to Israel in overwhelming numbers. Okay? So yeah, in just 3 years' time, in spite of this all-encompassing, unbelievably sophisticated propaganda apparatus and influence peddling operation and direct cash infusions to the campaigns of virtually every politician in this goddamn country, Israel's fallen out of favor with the American public. The collapse in American public support for Israel, particularly over Gaza and Iran, changed the calculus for Israel. But instead of questioning the policies that led to that collapse, Israel has doubled down on the influence operations. Israel's now on track to become the largest spender of foreign influence under FARA in 2026. This is not the AIPAC style influence peddling that we see. Okay, this is just the foreign registry, the foreign agent registered amount. Nick Cleveland Stout also has a timeline detailing Israel's new lobby, showing key moments in Israel's influence operations ramping up. There are no signs of this slowing down, with Israel most recently hiring a producer of Spike Lee's Inside Man, to produce pro-Israel social media content. A lot of this is disclosed in the Justice Department documents, but a lot of it is not. Not under FARA includes $700,000 in Israeli government funds to Eagle's Wings to lobby the USG on the U.S.-Israel military relationship. Social media influencers paid by Israel. Only one social media influencer, Yoav Davis, has registered. Names of consulting firms that have been subcontracted. We know that these kinds of influence operations can change minds. One social media influencer who went on a paid trip to Israel told me that she was radicalized by the trip. Israeli influence can be successful at reaching social media feeds, targeting key delegations, and reaching the pews of churches while still failing to move public opinion. But influence alone cannot be a substitute for an organic shift in response to unpopular policies. Just something to consider for when you see so many random people on the timeline who spend a good deal of time defending Israel in very strange ways. Sometimes that could just be hand-waving away Israel's influence. Sometimes it's someone just implying that you're anti-Semitic because you're like, why do you hyper-focus on AIPAC? Because no other country has this level of deep embedded propaganda on U.S. soil. Okay? Not a single other country touches a fraction of this. Tenet is a great example of this, which was a Russian operation where Russia contracted a Canadian media organization that went to the likes of Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, and many others, and gave them money. Gave them money in exchange for pro-Russian, or rather anti-Ukraine propaganda. That was investigated and uncovered by the Department of Justice. Okay? Department of Justice investigated that. Now, of course, none of the Republican operatives that took that money actually received any legal scrutiny when they should have. In my opinion, it's fucking treason. It's what they say I'm doing with my commentary on America's actions against Cuba, or my commentary on China, not as a foreign adversary, but as a country that we need to have a better relationship with. They say that is paid propaganda. They say that is treason. Meanwhile, these guys are actually doing the treason. These opinions that I hold are my own, okay? I don't get paid for them. I'm only accountable to you, the viewers. Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the people, for you, the people. People's Broadcasting Service for tomorrow's news today. If you want to support the show, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. You can also gift subs. If we reach level 20 on the hype train, you might see a tank top stream in the near future. That's right, I'm slutting myself out. But that's the difference. Your subscriptions also help maintain my editorial independence. But yeah, as far as Perplexity, when I asked Perplexity if it's beneficial for the U.S. to enhance military cooperation with Israel, it responded with a one-word answer, yes. The top source cited is alivia.org, a website created specifically for Israel to influence chatbots. Michael Fusco Art, thank you for the 50 bones. If we get to level 10 hype train, we carry the flame. Level 20 hype train, tank top stream. When asked of Perplexity if it's beneficial for the U.S. to enhance military cooperation with Israel, it responded with a one-word answer, yes. This person asked, have you asked each one if they disclose the identity or who's funding the sites they are sourcing? I just asked ChatGPT, and they said they would have reference, for example, the Israeli government if the website disclosed the info. Yeah. When I asked chatbots about the latest news from paxpoint.org, one of the sites, Perplexity and Copilot did not flag that the site was created as a part of an Israel influence operation. Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini did flag the caveat. But if they are just citing these sources, people have to click on the site and go all the way to the bottom of the page to see that it's part of an Israeli influence operation. One of the newest versions of Israel Hasbara, now that I'm done covering this situation, one of the, here is Israelis openly conspiring to inject pro-Israel bias into AI. This is at the AJC. It's one of those conferences where they just like openly talk about it, by the way. The American Jewish Committee.
See genuine opportunity. How can AI help improve Jewish representation in all these issues?
The really cool thing about AI is that while it can become a great ally for our enemies, if we act early, it can be exactly the opportunity that we need. After missing the boat with social media, AI is now becoming the dominant source of information, the main source of information. People trust AI more than anything else. They trust AI more than social media. They turn to chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini instead of using Google, and young people use these bots instead of Google in very, very, very large numbers. So this is becoming the main source of information, okay? And so when I say this, I still find Jewish people being discouraged. They say, oh, but Wikipedia is already so anti-Semitic and social media is so anti-Semitic. Why bother? The AI just learns from all of this data. So, you know, whatever, not much we can do. But that's not true. Because over the past 2 years, the AI companies have been moving towards alignment. So instead of the algorithms sort of honestly representing what's in the data, we're finding that these chatbots and the text-to-image models are increasingly showing us exactly what the companies want us to see, okay? So it's becoming intentional, which means that instead of trying to control the whole world and trying to somehow manage what's happening in this big blob of Wikipedia and social media, we can go directly to the companies with clear technical and advocacy solutions. So for the first time, there is a path to correcting the digital world.
Thank you, Maya. Yeah.
Yeah. The ADL, by their own admission, is already doing this.
We're in regular contact with the major AI companies, and I'm proud to share making a difference. For example, last year, we showed OpenAI how its new video generation AI tool, Sora, made it easy to create anti-Semitic videos. We worked it out with them, laid out the facts, and then 9 months later, when version 2 came out, Sora now refuses to generate videos around several of the specific concepts that we discussed and shared with OpenAI's team.
Yeah. The operation isn't primarily aimed at persuading people, the drop site reports. Its goal is to persuade artificial intelligence. Internal contract language signed directly with the Israeli government explicitly stated that Parscale would deploy websites and content to deliver GPT framing results on GPT conversations. The site received very little human traffic, but are structured to be picked up by AI. They tested it with Perplexity. The network consists of 10 different websites, each promoting a different Israeli narrative. Examples include Israel's a nation of peace, Israel protects civilians, slaying Gaza journalists were Hamas members, Israel's not committing a genocide, U.S.-Israel military integration benefits Americans. Each site disclosed at the bottom that it's distributed on behalf of the state of Israel. The campaign doesn't just influence chatbot search results, though. It also appears to be entering datasets used to train future AI models. DropSite found Parscale sites had already been archived 912 times by Common Crawl, one of the largest repositories used to train large language models. So their goal isn't to convince people at this stage. Their goal is to get the AI to convince people eventually, but their goal is to basically infiltrate AI and train AI to deliver pro-Israel outputs, and specifically pro-Israel propaganda, like the military merger being an overall benefit for America. That is a direct and immediate goal of the Israeli government. Okay? It's incredible. Research told DropSite the campaign is sophisticated because it avoids obvious propaganda. Instead, the articles are heavily sourced, tightly organized, written in a measured tone, filled with bullet points and key takeaways. Exactly the type of content AI systems are more likely to retrieve and summarize. The operation has grown dramatically. Parscale originally signed a $1.5 million per month contract with Israel. It has since expanded to roughly $4.5 million every month, about $46.5 million overall. Campaign also includes anonymous text message operations posing as grassroots peace groups that direct Americans to the same websites. The implications go far beyond search results. As more people rely on AI to answer political and historical questions, governments are increasingly competing to shape what those systems retrieve and eventually what they learn. That's where we're at. And perhaps one of the less sophisticated versions of this Hasbara propaganda is something that I saw on my timeline earlier today. And I have to show you. Because remember, it's not just about manipulating public opinion to like Israel. It's also about attacking Israel's critics, attacking Israel's prominent critics. And it's also about pushing Islamophobia. One of the major vectors of Islamophobic hate has always been Ilhan Omar. Trigger warning, you are going to see straight pussy in here, okay? I'm just letting you guys know. Camel toe warning ahead of time. Dogs are out as well. This is the slop the pro-Israel crowd pushes on young conservative men that target the audience of Israel's Eighth Front war campaign. Here it is. No, it's literally insane. It's the most insane thing I've ever watched.
Can we please stop addressing Ilhan Omar as a congresswoman?
It literally starts off with her pulling up her Lululemons for the camel toe.
Can we please stop addressing Ilhan Omar as a congresswoman? I mean, she's literally a fraud. This is a person who came to the USA to corrupt its people and resources. She went from negative $65,000 net worth to over $30 million and denies it. She denies it and she blames it on an accounting error. That's not all. Then there's the winery with no clear location, no wine at all, no phone number, no visible operations. It seems abnormal, doesn't it? And then she proceeds to insult the reporter asking about these things, asking her to explain it to the people. And on top of all of these unknown things, she calls World War II World War XI. So how is someone so fucking stupid able to become an important topic in this country? She is literally the trending topic in the United States of America. It blows my mind. She is the opposite of everything that we stand for in this country. And she literally married her brother. We do not marry our brothers here. We don't marry siblings here. We do not do that. Can we please stop addressing?
I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. I just don't think that anyone is going to listen to this and be like, well, hell yeah, I heard everything you said, Queen. They're going after gooners now. This is insane. And for the record, it's not old. It's not new. This is old school. Same propaganda strategy that the IDF has deployed all the time. Okay. They have done, the IDF, the Israeli occupying forces, have always deployed sex to sell the IDF in general. They've done gooner bait before. I've talked about this before. So when will you use sex to sell socialism? I told you, if we get to level 20 on a hype train, I'll do it. There's more. She's delivering 2010 talking points while cooter mogging. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, this is insane. What the fuck is going on? Why is she just like straight up giving us pussy? Like, it's not even fucking like hidden. Like, she's not even like trying to do this in a tasteful way. Dogs are out, hikes up the fucking pants every time, showing straight cooter. What is going on? She's hitting the fucking labia exam position. Ain't nobody sits like that for fun. Yeah, it's not even sexy. It's borderline sexual harassment, dude. I just perused some videos, but I bet Savannah is infinitely more well-adjusted than 80% of the so-called right-wing Foyd sphere. She doesn't pretend to be something she's not, and she's well aware of what she's doing to gain a following and generate revenue. Low neurosis, not bad. She doesn't get any views on out. That's going to change soon, now that she went fucking viral for this shit. I've never seen anything like this, dude. Yeah, new account. Follow my IG. Sav Cannon Talk, Sav Cannon. Who's our audience for this shit? Gooners. Fight back, big bro. All right, dude. Dick Prince. That's what we got to do. I got to ramp up. The meat pics. I got to go back to the tank tops and ramp up the fucking meat pics. Is this not AI? No, I don't think it is. Start clapping cheeks, brother. No hands. Fight fire with fire. Anyway, I'm in shock at how egregious, how aggressive this is. All cooter mog all day. Moose knuckle time, brother. So glad you decided to wear a suit while covering this. Yes, I am moving in the opposite direction. I'm being presentable. Anyway, that's the latest Hasbara operation from Israel and Israel's new influence strategy.